Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी अनुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंश कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय राधनाथ स्वामी नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतवेशमिति भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामने नमः। गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष निवादि पाश्चात्य कम करोति वाचालं पंकुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरं। हरि ओम सत्। हरे कृष्ण। So I'd like to welcome all of you back to our discussion of the Bhagavad cosmology. It's a very interesting series, which is the second part of the fifth canto. The first part being the descendants of Prevrat Maharaj in the first 15 chapters. And then 16 chapter onwards for around 11 chapters, based on the curiosity expressed by Parikshit Maharaj about Priyavrat's exploits in terms of dividing Bhumandal. That leads to a cosmological conversation for the benefit of everyone. So the last class we gave a long introduction to the topic as to why this is important, because many times devotees feel, why should I bother? What planet is there? Of course, it is not a must that one must understand this topic to go back to Godhead. Ultimately, all we need is love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But there's one thing which Prabhupada would often say, that to appreciate the Supreme Lord, it is important, and especially for neophyte sadhakas like us, to understand the greatness of God. Many times people say God is great, but Prabhupada says people do not know how great God is. And because we cannot perceive the transcendental realm, the easier way for us, conditioned souls who have no direct experience of the transcendental realm, is to get some appreciation of the greatness of God through the process of understanding His creation. So the emphasis is not so much on the technical knowledge. At the end of the day, if we understand after the discussions on Sarga, Visarga, and Sthanam, Sarga being primary creation, Visarga being secondary creation, and Sthanam being the structure. Sthanam is the very specific topic that we are discussing now. Sthanam, topic of Sthanam, even though Sthanam literally means place. Place for what? Place where the living entities stay. But the Bhagavatam itself defines Sthanam as Sthanam Vaikuntha Vijaya. What does that mean? It means that Sthanam describes how the Supreme Lord of Vaikuntha rules over the living entities in this world. How the boss has organized the universe to fit in various kinds of living entities based on various situations and conditions and desires and qualifications. So this itself means this is not just about geography, but this is about understanding the glorious rule of the Lord as the Lord of creation. So when we appreciate the material creation and get some idea of its dimension, its variety, its complexities, its vastness, its opulences, we really start scratching our head. So far out. Then we start realizing that we are like a frog in the well. We know only our little well. We are trying to estimate the expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. So this is how devotees gradually, because nobody can actually estimate the Lord's potency, but at least we can get an appreciation or realization of the fact that Lord's energy, opulence, potencies are unlimited. And it is so complex, complicated, that no one but the Lord can fully understand and manage such complexity and such variety. So appreciation for the Lord increases. So when we understand the opulences of the Lord, when we understand the greatness of the Lord, what happens simultaneously? We realize our insignificance in front of the Lord, our dependence on the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord very clearly says that he who understands my glories properly, he cannot but fall in love with me and surrender to me. So through this endeavor, whether we all remember at the end of our discussion on these 11 chapters all the details of the construction or not, at least I hope at the end we will develop some appreciation and feel that wow, this is so far out. So we hope and pray that at least this objective gets achieved. So we are continuing our discussion. We started our discussion on the 16th chapter of the 5th canto. We discussed the first 4 or 5 verses only, beginning with the question which Shukadeva Goswami was asked by Maharaj Parikshit about the details of the geography based on the Bhumandal. But before we continue our discussion, I just want to give you a quick definition of some of the terminology that is being used. So oftentimes, as we discuss this cosmology, the term Dvipa, Varsha, Yojana is repeatedly used. So these terms are not random terms. They have a very specific meaning in the Sanskrit language. So what does the word Dvipa mean? Typically, we tend to think of Dvipa as an island in today's common usage. But actually, the Vedic definition of the word Dvipa is not necessarily an island. An island is a piece of land which is surrounded on all sides by water. But the Vedic definition of the term Dvipa is Dvipa. He who drinks water on two sides. Pa means to piba, drink. Dvi means on two sides, which means a piece of land on which there's water on two sides, not necessarily on all sides. This is an interesting thing to note. That is why many pieces of land can be categorized as Dvipa. Actually, many peninsulas can be categorized as Dvipa. So Malaysia also can be called Dvipa, even though it's not an island from a English definition. Because it has on both sides it has water. At least on two sides it has water. So that is one definition, Dvipa. What is a Varsha? A Varsha is a land or a valley which is between two mountains. So in many of these Dvipas, which have water at least on two sides, further division of the land into Varshas happens by mountains. So just like, we are in Malaysia, we say we are in Klang Valley, Kuala Lumpur, Klang Valley. So in Sanskrit, we will say we are in the Klang Varsha. So the valley is a Varsha. Of course, Bhagavatam doesn't mention about Klang Valley. It's too insignificant to mention. Even the whole earth is mentioned as only one speck. So that is Dvipa and Varsha. And Yojana is a measure of distance. Yojana is roughly around 1 yojana is roughly around 6.06 miles. There are some people who consider it as 8 miles for a yojana, but I will not go into the technicality of why there is a difference between 6.06 and 8, but 6.06 seems to be the more correct understanding. Especially the great saint, Madhva saint, Srila Vadiraj Tirtha Maharaj. This very great Madhva saint. He has written 2 very, very famous works on Vedic cosmology, which are greatly helpful to understand Vedic cosmology. Because Bhagavad is one book, but then there are so many references to scriptures, to cosmology, which are scattered across various scriptures. Vayu Puran, Mahabharata, ABC, XYZ, so many small. He has written 2 books in Sanskrit, many, I do not know in which year, but long back. And these 2 books are known as Bhugola Varnanam and Surya Siddhanta. Very popular works. These books are referred to by scholars even up to this day, Sanskrit books. So in fact, the Vedic cosmology, the Bhagavad cosmology that we are talking about and the details we are talking about, this whole picture has been built based on the Srimad Bhagavad, based on the commentaries by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on Srimad Bhagavad, where he makes shares certain insights, and Srila Vadiraj Tirtha Maharaj, Gola Varnanam and Surya Siddhanta. These are the main works. which when put together, essentially give us this full view. So we are very grateful to Srila Vadiraj Tirtha Maharaj, who digested this knowledge. He was an expert on this topic, and he wrote this book for posterity, so that we will be benefited. So the Madhvites accept that 1 yojana is 6.06 miles. And when we do calculations like that, most of the distances that we spoke about between modern science and the Bhagavad cosmology or the Surya Siddhanta tallies very well. So today we'll be entering into the main topic of the chapter. My intention is to complete the chapter, Krishna willing. This chapter is entitled A Description of Jambudwip. So the right pronunciation is Jambudwip. Sometimes I say Jambu, sometimes I say Jambu. And why it is known as Jambudwip also we'll discuss. That's a part of the discussion of the chapter itself. By the way, Jambu is a fruit. Actually, in Malaysia also Jambu is a fruit. Correct? But the Jambu in Sanskrit is different from the Jambu, the Malaysian Jambu, but it's a fruit nonetheless. The Jambu refers to the rose apple. The Sanskrit name Jambu refers to the rose apple. If you're not sure what it is also known as jam, sometimes it's known as Jambu. You can later Google and see how it looks like. It's a very nice, juicy, refreshing fruit, which I like. So, we discussed how unlimited universes come from the body of Mahavishnu. Within each universe, there is Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who fills half of the ocean, half of the universe with Garbhodaka liquid, and then the universe is created. So the Bhumandal is like a disk which is situated at the center of the universe. We had seen that diagram earlier. I can show you very, very quick. There are many, many, many pictures, but let me do a share of this. Then we can go to other pictures as well. Yes. Okay, are you all able to see now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Yes,
You can
Prabhuji.
see my cursor. You can see my cursor moving across the image.
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, good,
Yes,
good.
Prabhuji.
Put the pointer separately. Okay. So this is a very quick recap, so we don't lose the bigger picture. This is one Brahmanda. The Brahmanda is covered by 8 layers. Sometimes it's called 7, sometimes it is mentioned as 8. But there are various layers: earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, pradhan, mahattattva. Like that, there are certain the elements as they become subtler and subtler and subtler. These layers are there. These layers here are not to scale. It is said each of the subsequent layers are 10 times the width of the previous layer. So you can imagine that the last layer will be 10 raised to 7 times the thickness of this layer. So that's why if you try to imagine the universe in your mind, you cannot even imagine it. Anyway, I don't want to boggle you with that, but this is a simple representation. That's why I'm saying that there are so many things which are so difficult to conceive and difficult to imagine, that sometimes it is for our own good that we become satisfied with a simplistic explanation, so that at least the key objective of appreciating the glory of the Lord can be achieved. Because if we get too much confused trying to figure it out fully, then we will not reach that objective of appreciating. So there is the Garbhoda question. Actually, inside the Garbhoda question, even though it's not shown in the picture, Lord Garbhodakshay Vishnu is lying. He has filled half the ocean. There's Kurmadev floating on top of his back. On top of his back, this is Shesha. Doesn't look like Shesha, but I'm telling you, this is Sheshnag with millions of hoods. On the hoods of Sheshanag, these are the Diggajas. The Diggajas, 8 of them are supporting the Bhumandal disk. This is not showing all the universe. This is just showing this aspect. This is the Meru Parvat, which is in the center of the Jambudwip, which is the central circle here. And there's a pole star here. Of course, there are many other, there's the sun, there's the moon, there are the nakshatras, there are the grahas, all of them here. Then there's the Janar Mahar Tapar Satyaloka here. All that is not shown in this diagram. But our focus immediately is this Bhumandal disk. So Bhumandal is a very, very significant part of the universe. So within the Bhumandal, there are multiple divisions, and we discussed this briefly last time, that the Bhumandal has many concentric circles which Priyavrat Maharaj with his chariot, he made deep trenches within the Bhumandal, and these trenches got filled with various kinds of liquids, and there happened to be various kinds of oceans. The ocean which is closest to us is the saltwater ocean. That's why we have all salty water. But then there is also the sugarcane ocean. There is also the milk ocean. There is the ghee ocean. There is the liquor ocean, which may excite some people. And so on and so forth. Many kinds of oceans. And the last ocean, the furthest towards the end of the Bhumandal, is a freshwater ocean. There is also a freshwater ocean. So this is the background, and the center of the whole Bhumandal is known as Jambudwip. So it is said in Jambudwipa, actually the Bhagavatam says that this whole Bhumandal resembles like a lotus flower. And the central part of the Bhumandal, which has the Meru and the Jambudwip, represents the whorl of a lotus. So this is the Bhumandal. The small area are the various dvipas and the oceans. And this represents like a lotus flower. The lotus flower's innermost whole is this very interesting structure, which is very similar to Mount Sumeru. And there are also various mountains surrounding Sumeru, which are compared to these filaments near the whorl of a lotus. And then the various dvipas and their oceans are compared to the various layers of petals. So that is how the comparison of the lotus is given. So this chapter is actually focused on the discussion of Jambudwipa specifically. And even though this chapter focuses on Jambudwipa, this is how the Jambudwipa looks like. Not a very clear diagram, but do not worry about all the divisions. We'll go into that separately. But this is what Jambudwipa, the most central part, in which the Mount Sumeru is located at the center. The Jambudwipa, which was ruled by Maharaj Nabhi, at the very center, and this whole Jambudwip was actually divided into 9 varshas based on various mountains, and we'll discuss that as well. But this very queer mountain, which is known as Mount Sumeru, is situated at the central varsha of the Jambudwip, which is known as Ilavarta Varsha. As you can make out from this diagram, that Mount Sumeru, which is situated at the center of Jambudwip, is also quite queer. Typically, mountains are having a wide base and a thin top. But Mount Sumeru is wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. It is said Mount Sumeru is around 100,000 yojanas tall, out of which 86,000 yojanas are here and are visible above the Bhumandal, and 16,000 yojanas are buried into the Bhumandal. The diameter at the bottom here, where it touches the Bhumandal, is also around 16,000 yojanas. At the top, it is 32,000 yojanas diameter. The whole Mount Sumeru is a bright, shining mountain made of solid gold. This Mount Sumeru is much larger than the earth. You can imagine how much gold is there. So if any one of you want to be rich, then you can start looking for Mount Sumeru. But there are some tricks about how to find it, but we'll discuss that a little later. So we'll go step by step. I'm not going to explain all aspects of this diagram yet. This was just a quick view so you understand what Mount Sumeru looks like. But the first thing that Shukadev Goswami does is to give a top view explanation of the Jambudwip. Now please understand, this Jambudwip is the innermost circle of the 7 concentric circles where there are 7 oceans and 7 dvipas. So this innermost circle, which is Jambudwip, is surrounded by the saltwater ocean on all sides, which is the first ocean, the innermost ocean. At the center is Jambudwip, sorry, at the center, is Jambudwip, and surrounding it is South Water Ocean. Then another Dweep, then another ocean, then another Dweep, then another ocean. Like that, 7 Dweepas, 7 oceans. And succeeding Dweepa and oceans are twice the size of the previous one, which indicates how big the subsequent ones are, which means how small Jambudwip is as compared to the other Dweepas. So, one thing I want to mention to you is that as a part of the discussion of the geography, there are a lot of numbers which the Bhagavatam mentions in terms of the dimensions of the various geographical features. The width of the mountain, the height of the mountain, the length of a particular varsha or a dvipa, the height of mountains, and so on and so forth. I will not be mentioning all the numbers, only some few numbers which I feel are more important, my assessment. I will share those because I do not want this to be too technical. So the Jambudvipa, which is this circular piece of land surrounded by the saltwater ocean, naturally has various mountain ranges which divides this Jambudvipa into 9 varshas. And these 9 varshas are slightly different sizes. But as you can see, there's a very interesting symmetry in these dvipas. So the central square varsha in Jambudvipa is the Ilavarta varsha. Shiva and Parvati and their servants stay here. This Ilavarta varsha is surrounded by 4 mountains: Mount Nila, Mount Gandhamadhana, Mount Nishada, Mount Malyava. It's a square area. At the center of this square area is Mount Sumeru. Now, we will be zooming into Sumeru and what is immediately around Sumeru, because that's the majority of the discussion in this chapter. But before we go there, let us have a quick overview of the geography of the entire Jambudvip. So there are various mountain ranges. You can see there's a Mount Shringavan here, there's a Mount Shweta, there's the Nila we discussed, then there's a Mount Nishad, Mount Hemakuta, Mount Himalaya. So this entire Jambudvip is divided into 9 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 varshas. Ilavarta varsha with Ketumal varsha and Bhadrashva varsha on either sides. Above, towards the north, is Ramyaka varsha, Hiranmaya varsha, and Kuru varsha. And down is, below is Hari varsha, Kimpurush varsha, and Bharat varsha. So where is India? Where is Earth here?
Bharat
In
Varsha,
Bharat,
Prabhuji.
in
Bharatvarsha.
Bharat Khanda, in Bharat Varsha.
Yeah, in Bharat Khanda, in Bharat Varsha. So Bharat Khanda is not even shown here. The southernmost tip of Bharat Varsha is Bharat Khanda. Bharat Varsha itself is divided into, by the sea, into smaller pieces of land. And the southernmost tip is Bharat Khanda. So this Mount Himalaya obviously is not our Mount Himalaya on Earth. this Himalaya is not on Earth planet, it is in Bhumandal. Just so that you don't lose perspective. So in this particular geography, the Ilavarta Varsha with the Mount Sumeru is particularly significant. One thing I just want to mention is all these mountains, it is said each of these mountains are around 2000 yojanas in width. And each of them, these mountains, are around 10,000 yojanas in height. So nowhere on earth you can find mountains of this height. The highest peak on earth is Mount Everest, whose height is around, I think, 8,000 something meters or something like that, which is around 8 kilometers, 9 kilometers height of the mountain. Here, all these mountains are 10,000 yojanas or 80,000 miles high. $80,000 miles high and 2,000 miles wide. Just to give you some idea of the dimensions here. Huge, huge, huge. Mountains and huge, huge, huge pieces of land. So all of these are of the same height, and they are dividing the Jambudwip into 9 parts. The chapter then describes that Mount Sumeru, on 4 sides of Mount Sumeru. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go to a different image with zooms into Ilavarta Varsha, because that is the focus for the remaining part of this chapter, because Ilavarta Varsha is very interesting. Ilavarta Varsha is very interesting. I just want to mention one thing to you. Maybe I may forget it later, that's why I want to mention. Please understand that out of the whole Bhumandal, including Jambudwip, only Bharatvarsha is Karma Bhumi. Only this part is Karma Bhumi. All the rest of Jambudwip, as well as the entire Mandal, all these realms are super high class abodes of enjoyment, even though they are a part of Bhumandal. So they have great opulence and great enjoyment. Maybe not on the scale like heaven, because the scale of enjoyment on heaven is even higher. But here also there is extraordinary beauty, opulence, and enjoyment. So these are also heavenly realms, and that's why they're also occupied and frequented by heavenly denizens. Obviously, if Shiva and Parvati are staying here and sporting here, and Devatas are also coming here, and we'll discuss that shortly, then obviously this is not like a park or a mountain in one of our cities. These are very, very beautiful, extraordinary places with extraordinary features, and we'll discuss about them. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be discussing the central part, which is which is Ilavarta Varsha. Image of Ilavarta Varsha. Zoom. Okay. Forgive me, the image. Some of these images are not that good, but I tried to do whatever I could. So this is just a zoom in, and some features are a bit more elaborately shown. So this is the top view of Mount Sumeru. Like what I mentioned, the Sumeru at the top is wider than Sumeru at the bottom. So if you see, this is the circumference at the top. At the bottom, Mount Sumeru is only half of this, because it is like this. Yeah, this is the top that we just saw. The bottom is almost half. Now, Mount Sumeru, like what we discussed, is 86,000 yojanas above the Bhumandals. Land. It's a solid mountain made of gold. It is shining and resplendent like anything. Because even the sun's rays are shining brightly on Mount Sumeru. Can you imagine? Huge mountain of gold. Now, in case some of you are wondering, Prabhuji, can I go on my terrace of my condo and look out for this Sumeru? If it is really so big, why I can't see it? And if it is such a big mountain of gold, why I can't see it? Because if it is truly so tall, then from my Bharat Khanda, I should be able to see it, right? So in one sense, yes, it sounds logical, but the point is that all these realms, they are not gross. Even the rest of Bhumandal is not gross and not perceptible to the human eyes. So Mount Sumeru is there, but you can't see it. Alas. So even to be able to see there, you have to perform punyas to go and be born in these regions, that you can sport in these extraordinary areas. So the description goes like this, that around Mount Sumeru in Ilavarta Varsha, there are 4 big mountains. Kumuda, then Saparshva, Meru Mandar, and Mandar. 4 huge mountains. There are a lot of details given about the mountains. I am going to be mentioning only a few, the interest of time. Besides these 4 big mountains, which are very, very tall, there are also 8 other mountains, 2 on each side of Mount Sumeru. For example, there is Trishringa, Makara, and so on. I'm not going to mention all the names. This is Kailash, Karvira, and so on. East side is Malyavan, Gandhamadan. Then there is Neela and Nishada, and so on and so forth. The main 4 mountains are these 4 mountains: Kumuda, Mandara, Meru Mandara, and Saparshva. They are very, very huge. Apart from these 4 and these 8 mountains, there are another 20 mountains, which are all these dots. They are thin but very tall mountains. It is said they almost resemble like filaments surrounding the whorl of a lotus. You remember this? You see this part of the lotus. This is like Mount Sumeru, and these are the filaments around it. These mountains represent the filament. They're almost as tall as Mount Sumeru, but they are like projecting up, straight, like small pencils all around. And there are 20 such mountains. So that's how it looks like. So this is the top view. You can see 20 dots. Each of them has a name. And all these mountains together, these 20 mountains together, are known as the Kesharachala mountains. So these 4 big mountains, they are 10,000 yojanas tall and 2,000 yojanas wide. And the 8 mountains here are slightly smaller. In width, they are also 2,000 yojanas, but in height, they are only 2,000 yojanas. So these are the really big ones. Now, these 4 big ones have some very, very special features because each of these mountain is very unique. I do not know whether you can see what is written on this picture clearly because the image even in the book that I took this from wasn't that sharp. But each of these mountains on the top has a tree at the very top. For example, we'll start with Mount Mandar. Mount Mandar has a Devachyuta tree at its top. What is a Devachyuta tree? It is actually a mango tree. Now you may say, Prabhuji, why after all this, you're telling me one mango tree at the top of this mountain? What's so special? KL, so many mountains have so many mango trees. So please hold your horses. I haven't completed. This mango tree is 1,100 yojanas high. So it's almost 8,000 miles high, the tree. Please do not think that these are fictional narrations. These are not fictional, imaginary descriptions. These are descriptions of heavenly-like realms within the Bhumandal. It is said the mangoes which are laden on this tree, which is 8,000 miles tall, each one mango is the size of a mountain peak. Huge mango. And it is said time to time when the mangoes become very ripe, they fall from the mango tree. Can you imagine like a huge peak of a mountain falling down? And when it falls down from the tree, imagine if it is at the top of the tree, it is falling down from a height of 8,800 miles. A huge mango. That mango itself may be a few kilometers in size. As it falls on the slopes of Mount Mandar, what happens? It produces mango juice. Without putting it in a mixie, it will crash and it will break into juice. And the denizens of heaven, they gather there to drink the juice. In fact, there are streams of mango river. In fact, there's a river which is known as the Arunoda river, which is full of this mango juice. It is said this mango juice is very nourishing. whoever drinks this mango juice, they become so happy, they become so effulgent, they become so strong. There are a lot of descriptions of this mango juice, which, because of shortage of time, I will not go into. It is said on this mountain, other than this mango tree and this Arunoda river, there is also a milk lake, and there are gardens known as the Nandana Gardens. So there is a similar situation on the other three mountains, these three. Each of them has a tree at the top. For example, Kumuda mountain has a tree known as the Shatavalsa tree, which is actually a banyan tree, which is also, I think, 1,100 yojanas in height. It also has a lake, which is a pure water lake. It also has a garden, Sarvato Bhadra garden. And it also has a river. What kind of a river? Has a river of milk and yogurt. This Meru Mandar is very special. Meru Mandar has a rose apple or a jambu tree at its top. Again, 1,100 yojanas in height. He said each jambu fruit is the size of an elephant. And when these jambu fruits fall from the tree, again, they crash to the ground, and the juice that comes forms this Jambu Nadi. And this Jambu Nadi is so intoxicating to drink this juice, and the demigods come and drink this juice. It is said this Jambu juice has such special properties that when it mixes with the sand around Meru Mandar, along with the action of air and sunlight, when it gets dried, this mixture of the sand of Meru Mandar, the Jambu juice, it gets converted to gold. So the banks of this river are all golden because it is formed of gold. And the demigods come there, they pick up that gold, they make various kinds of ornaments from there. Similarly, the other mountain here, the, I can zoom. The Suparshwa mountain here has a huge Mahakadamba tree at the top. It has a sugarcane juice lake. It has a Vaibhrajaka garden, and it has rivers of honey. So all these honey also has very special characteristics. Some of these ingredients are so fragrant that whoever has drunk this honey for many, many yojanas around, people can smell. Just like, sometimes after we eat something, we have a bad breath, and anybody comes near us, they can smell. Oh, you ate this, can smell, you ate something terrible. So it is said for miles around, a person who has drunk either this honey or who has drunk from the Arunoda river, they said it spreads fragrance everywhere. So these particular mountains and the lakes and the rivers, these are all actually picnic spots for the heavenly denizens. Demigods come down, they have a party here. The Gandharvas, Siddhas, and the Charanas, they also come and enjoy the facilities of the lakes and the rivers. So just like we go for holidays, these are places of holidays and enjoyment. All these beings are also perfected mystical beings, not perfected in the sense of spiritually realized, but they have various mystic siddhis. And these devatas come and sport here across these various mountains. It is said sometimes heavenly devatas come down to these mountains and enjoy, and they are accompanied by their attendants, which are the smaller devatas and the Gandharvas and the Charanas. And then they all have great time. Especially this Arunoda river. It is said the wives of the Yakshas, the Yakshinis, who act as the personal servants of Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, they love to drink the water of this Arunoda river. And by drinking that water, their bodies become fragrant. And the entire atmosphere around that area, they said 80 miles around them, the whole atmosphere becomes fragrant just by their drinking the water of the Arunoda river. And please do not go into the Ilavarta Varsha, especially this area where Lord Shiva and Bhavani and the assistants of Bhavani are staying. So please don't go on this particular mountain. Why? Because it is described later in the Srimad Bhagavad that whoever enters this area immediately gets transformed to a lady, especially a man, if he enters this area. So if you're a woman already, no problem. But if you're a man, if you enter this area, you'll automatically be transformed into the form of a woman. So the living entities who enjoy these facilities here, it is said, have beautiful heavenly bodies, such bodies that there are no wrinkles on their bodies, there is no gray hair, they never feel fatigue. Their perspiration, even though they are climbing and running around on mountains, there is no bad odor. You don't have to go around with deodorants. They are not even afflicted by old age or disease. Their bodies, their heavenly bodies are such. They never even have to face an untimely death. The temperatures in these areas are so wonderful. It is neither too cold nor too hot. Perfect temperature. Their bodies do not lose their luster. They all live happily in these places, enjoying all this sports with their consorts and all these heavenly beings without any anxieties. How long? Until their death. And when do they die? Shine punne martyalokam vishanti. When their pious karma becomes over, they'll die. Just like in heavenly planets, because these are also planets of enjoyment or places of enjoyment. They also come in the same category. So some of us may feel, oh, this is such a nice place to be. And after all, it's not so far from Bharatvarsha. This seems to be a good stopover. Enjoyable place. Yes, of course, these places are relatively easier to attain as compared to Swargaloka. This also requires punya. In fact, living entities who perform punya within Bharatvarsha can also go and become born in one of these varshas or one of these dvipas to enjoy heavenly happiness for some time, and then they come back. The karma bhumi, which is the Bharatvarsha. But the important point to note here, and even though it's not mentioned here, but I thought it is worth mentioning, the important point to note here is that with this kind of an environment, with this kind of bodies, free from wrinkles, free from disease, no anxieties, don't feel tired, body is lustrous, enjoying all the time. You know what is the problem with that? Is there a problem? Anybody thinks that is a problem? Looks all
Yes,
good.
Prabhuji.
Yes, Amit Prabhu, what is the problem?
You will not think about the Lord. You will be busy enjoying the material opulences there.
Haribo. Anybody else wants to say anything more?
We forget Krishna. Oh,
Yes, thank you. So this is the problem with the heavenly abodes. It is not that Krishna consciousness cannot be executed, but in an environment like this, where one so easily forgets the miseries of material existence because of such a very pleasant setting and minimal miseries, one is so absorbed in material enjoyment that one becomes totally oblivious of one's conditioned nature. One has no motivation or drive take to spiritual life. One is perpetually in a picnic mood. So by that, even though it may seem like a very nice thing, actually living entities in such realms, and this is not even properly Swargaloka, this is Bhumandal only. Living entities who are in this situation, they become deprived of the opportunity to surrender to Krishna because they fail to see the need, because they do not do suffering. And that is why Bharatvarsha is so important. Because within Karma Bhumi, because enjoyment and suffering are so balanced, and miseries of material existence are so easily perceptible, that these miseries impel the living entities to make an endeavor to end these miseries, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi, and put an end to the cycle of samsara. And that is why it is said one has to come to the karma bhumi to actually make spiritual advancement. Because if one goes here, one is sitting in the Kanana Nandana mountains on Mount Mandar. I'm having a good time drinking from the Arunoda river. Somebody says, Prabhu, Bhagavatam class, please come. One will feel no, unless one is already very, very, very attached to the Supreme Lord and attracted, not feel any urgency to do any spiritual activity. So while devotional service can be performed anywhere, there is no place where devotional service cannot be performed. The urgency to take shelter of the Lord doesn't come unless one feels suffering. So this is the sad reality of the situation of the material world. And that is why those who want to achieve liberation want to be born in Bharatvarsha. Why? Because when they come to Karma Bhumi, because it is not a heavenly environment, miseries of material existence are perceived, one feels a strong impulse, urgency to surrender to the Lord, be free from the cycle of birth. Okay, so I just thought I wanted to mention that. So other than this, the other 20 mountains, they are also pencil-like. Not a lot is described about them, but they are said to be like the filaments around the whole of a lotus. The name of these mountains are Kuranga, Kurara, Kusumba, Vaikanka, Trikuta, Sishira, Patanga, Ruchaka, Nishad, Srinivasa, Kapila, Shankha, Vaidurya, Jarudi, Hamsa, Rishabha, Naga, Kalanjara, and Narada. So this is the description. I have not covered all the details. There are some other finer details also. You can read that because we are already at 10:05. I'm just going to take 2 more minutes. We are almost at the end of the chapter. I just want to show you one more slide as we can conclude. There's one more information which is mentioned in this chapter, which is that at the top of Mount Meru, which is at the center of Jambudwip and also the center of Ilavarta Varsha, the top of Mount Meru is not a peak, actually it's the flat surface like what we have seen, fully made of gold. At the center of the top part is the residential quarter of Lord Brahma, known as Manovati. And on the 8 directions, the 8 Lokapals have their own abodes. Vera, Shiva, Indra, Agni, Yama, Niriti, and Varuna, and Vayu. They all have their abodes. Of course, Brahma's abode here is the biggest in size. I think the others, their abode is, I think, roughly half the size, if I'm not wrong, of the size of Brahma. Sorry, 1/4, not half, 1/4 of the size of Brahmapuri. So these are like, even though Brahmaji stays in Brahmaloka, that's his private residence, but when there are any meetings that he needs to do, his office is here. When he needs to get together with other devatas and discuss something about universal affairs, this is his office. So just like, we have this new parliament building which has been established in Delhi. So whenever an assembly has to be called, all the representatives come from their residence and come there and meet. So similarly, these are offices of these important managers of the universe, the 8 Lokpals and Lord Brahma. For example, Yamaraj, his abode is said to be Shamyamani. So this is his assembly place. So like that, there are these 8 abodes. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. So this particular chapter, like what we discussed today, essentially gives a quick overview of Jambudwip, how it is divided into 9 varshas, and goes into a bit more detail into the structure of Ilavarta Varsha and the various kinds of beautiful features which are found in Ilavarta Varsha. Priyavrat actually gave the 9 islands to his 9 sons, and again from his sons within Jambudwip, the 9 varshas were again further distributed to that son's 9 sons. So like that. And the varshas are actually named based on those particular descendants. So when we talk about Ilavarta Varsha, Hari Varsha, and so on and so forth, these are actually the names of the rulers of that particular place. Actually, Bharatavarsha was originally not known as Bharatavarsha. Originally, it was known as Ajanabha Varsha. But because Bharat Maharaj was one of the descendants of Ajanab, he became so illustrious that later the Ajanabha Varsha became known as Bharatvarsha. So originally the Bharatvarsha was known as Ajanabha Varsha. It was ruled over by King Nabhi. So there is Priyavrat, then if I remember correctly, Agnidhra, Nabhi, Rishabh, and Bharat. You can correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I recollect, this is how the descendants are. So I'm opening up the floor. Sorry, it's around 10:10. If there are any questions, I don't know whether this is still too technical for you, but I'm trying my best to keep you informed. Yes, Suraj?
Yeah, Prabhuji, in the first slide, right? The circular earth is just that land, right? It's not the earth planet.
The circular earth
First slide.
in the first one. 1 minute. Let's see. First one. Oh, okay. The Jambudwip one with the 9 Varshas, is it?
Ah.
Okay, what is your question?
It says the circular earth, right? That means it's a land, right? Not that planet earth, right? No, not
Looking at this,
the first one, Prabhuji.
this
First
one?
slide. Yeah, circular earth and Meru. What does circular earth mean?
No, your circular earth is Mandal.
Okay.
This is Bhumandal. 1 minute. Let me see. This is the Bhumandal, which is Bhuloka. Okay, maybe it is just pointing. See, Meru is this mountain. The circular earth, it is pointing, but actually circular earth is not clearly identified here. Circular earth is at the tip of, actually it's way inside here. It's somewhere, it's a small dot. It's not clearly shown as a feature here, but at the, Jambudwip is at the center. If we say this is Jambudwip, then at the tip of Jambudwip, there will be Bharatvarsha. At the tip of Bharatvarsha will be Bharatkhanda, the circular earth. Bharatkhanda is circular earth. So this picture shows it better. Yeah, you see, this is Jambudwip.
Yeah.
This is Bharatvarsha. And this 9th division is actually the circular earth.
Okay. Got it.
So we'll go into this a little detail later. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very
Okay.
much.
Yeah. Amit Prabhu, you have a question?
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I have 2-3 questions.
Yeah.
So the first one, in some places it's referred to as Mount Meru, in some places Mount Sumeru. They are both the same, right?
Yes. So Meru and Meru are same. Sometimes they are Meru, sometimes it's called as Sumeru. Yes, the same mountain.
Okay. Another question, Prabhuji. So earlier in the 5th canto, when we were reading about the descendants of Maharaj Priyavrat, we saw that the 9 sons of Maharaj Agnidra married the 9 daughters of Meru. So that Meru is the same as this Mount Meru.
No, Mount Meru is not a personality. This one is.
Okay.
I do not think there is a connection, but I'm not very sure unless there is a personality who's ruling over Meru. But I have not read that. But that's something interesting. Yeah, I think we need to check that whether there's also a personality for Mount Meru who's known as Meru and his 9 daughters. Yeah, I remember that particular reference. Did you
Yes,
check the
9 daughters.
purports? Is anything mentioned?
No, I did not check. I just recollected that. I will check, Prabhuji.
Okay. Let me know.
Okay.
The 9 daughters of Meru. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be, but I'm not very sure. Could be.
Okay.
See, just like Himalaya. When we speak about Himalaya, Parvati is considered the daughter of Himalaya, right? So maybe from that there is a ruler of Meru. So it's not the mountain, but the ruler of the mountain itself, like a deity in charge. Maybe possible, but perhaps we need to check. Yeah.
Okay. And the final question, Prabhuji. So in your chart, we saw that at the southern end of Mount Meru was Mount Kailash. So that is the abode of Lord Shiva, right?
No,
Okay.
this
It's
Mount
not this.
Kailash is different. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
This, yeah. So this Kailash is not the spiritual Kailash. So, and I do not know why this mountain is called Kailash. It's not mentioned much in this chapter. Okay, so that's an interesting question. It's a good question. But there is a Kailash so this mountain is this Kailash. Sorry, here. This is the Kailash that we just saw. Yeah. But there is a Himalaya here. And in this Himalaya, there is a Kailash. So the Kailash that we talk where Lord Shiva stays is in this Himalaya, there is a Kailash. So there are many forms of Shiva also. Please do not think that Lord Shiva is in one place. There are 11 Rudras and different Rudras stay in different places. So there is a Shiva, here. There is a Lord Shiva here. And few other places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
I'm not very sure why this one is called as Kailash. Maybe some of these details may be in the cosmology book because I have not read through all the details. But I do not know whether this particular thing is mentioned about Kailash, but it's worth checking. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Devsundar bro.
So I just want to clear a doubt. Prabhu, when we talk about this Jambudwip and all this place and all, is it because we have got these 14 planetary systems, Prabhu? So are these part of the 14 planetary systems, or is it beyond that, Prabhu?
All of this is part of of Bhumandal, right?
Okay.
So we are discussing only Bhumandal right now. So Bhumandal is the middle one, right? So Earth is part of Bhumandal.
Okay.
And these are all parts of Bhumandal. Bhumandal is divided into 7 Dvipa and 7 oceans.
Okay.
And we are discussing the central Dvipa, which is Jambudwipa. And that central Dvipa, which is Jambudwipa, has 9 Varshas. The central Varsha is Ilavarta Varsha. We are in Bharat Varsha. Like that. So it's all discussion of Bhumandal only.
Okay, Prabhu, thanks.
Yeah. So the middle planetary system also, that's what we were saying, even in the middle planetary system, apart from Bharatvarsha, there is so much of opulence and so much of, heaven-like facilities, even on other aspects of, Bhumandal. It's quite interesting. Okay. Anything else?
Prabhuji,
Yeah, Swatiji first.
go ahead.
Yeah, then Tarun. Yeah, Swatiji. Yeah.
that 9 daughters of Meru is mentioned in the chapter of 5.2.
Yeah. But is there anything mentioned in the purport with respect to Meru? Is there a connection with Mount Meru?
After the death of Agnidhara, his 9 sons married 9 daughters of Meru, and the name is mentioned, all the 9 daughters.
Yeah. That we are aware. But his question is whether this Meru is the ruler of Mount Sumeru. That is the question.
No, not.
Yeah,
I have to go through deeply. Then only I can come to know.
Yeah. So if anyone finds that, then they can share next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Yeah. Tarun?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribol.
Prabhuji, I have a very basic question. When we are seeing that there are so many varshas, so many layers of Brahmanda, and every layer is so thick than the previous one, means just getting one very basic thing in the mind. will we ever be able to cross and reach to our ultimate goal to Krishna? Means so many bigger things are there, 1,000 users and like that, means it looks so big
Yeah,
and confused.
yes. So when we realize how big the Lord's creation is, and when we realize how small and insignificant we are, then only we take shelter.
Mhm.
And then when we take shelter, essentially we declare our dependence on the Lord and ask Him to deliver us. Then that is where Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham aham samuttarta mrityu samsara varpani bhavamini achirat partha maya veshita chetasam. That I become the swift deliverer of those who surrender to me. I deliver them from the ocean of birth. So we are depending on the Lord to arrange for our deliverance. Of course, we want to surrender to Him, but getting out, we are not looking for, we are not going on makemytrip.com and looking for, how I can make a itinerary to escape from the material world like that by some booking different kinds of flights. So the point is, when one becomes fully liberated from all material considerations and becomes a pure devotee, the Lord will arrange for us to be escorted out. So it is said that the Lord sends His personal associates to pick up and escort perfected living entities to Golok Vrindavan. So you don't have to worry, oh, now I am liberated. Now how do I go? Where do I go? How do I cross over? What direction? You don't have to sit with, Google map of Golok and, figure how you're going to get there. So that is not our problem. Our only problem is to become pure devotee. The rest, Krishna will take us, to the spiritual world. So the Lord's personal associates personally are sent by the Lord, escort perfected souls from the material world to the spiritual world. So no need to worry.
Got it, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hari Bo. Yeah, Charan Lakshmi Mataji, you want to say something?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, since there is a lot of opulence, heavenly opulence in highly planets, so is it possible for the demigods descends on to Bharatavarsa to go back to Krishna?
Yeah, so that is why being born in Bharatvarsha is considered most desirable. Even the devatas who want to achieve liberation, they are praying for a birth in Bharatvarsha. That's what the
Okay.
scriptures say. Because they also know that it is so difficult to practice spiritual life in that environment because of so much such a facility for enjoyment. Correct? Yeah. It's like, for us, if you want to make an equivalence, it's like us going to a party, music, dance, food, everybody, jumping around, beautiful decorations. And we say, can we sit here and study Bhagavad Gita, discuss Bhagavatam, chant our rounds, how is it going to be possible, to focus? How are we going to, we are going to be continuously distracted. Distracted not by the noise, but distracted by the allurement of enjoyment. And the reality of our situation and the situation of the conditioned soul is that actually it is suffering or misery, which is what gives impetus to the living entity to make an endeavor to achieve liberation and surrender to the Supreme Personality of God. If we don't have the impetus of misery, we will not go ahead. So that is why devotees don't see misery as bad by itself. They see misery as an opportunity to surrender. And that is why lives of devotees are usually not, of course, nobody's life is easy on earth, but especially it is said the Lord creates situation for the devotees so that they are forced to take shelter of His lotus feet. In that way, He accelerates their spiritual advancement. So we should see our misery, especially sadhakas, should see our misery as a blessing in disguise.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you. That means we are, in other words, we are gifted to born on this earth, Prabhu, to go back to God.
Yes, we are gifted. We have all the opportunity. Now it is up to us to make the best of it. So we can go back to Godhead much sooner, much faster than the demigods in heaven or any of these residents of any of these, even these, various Varshas and Dvipas, on Bhumandal. We can go much faster because
Thank
it
you,
is
Prabhu.
possible to practice spiritual life seriously in Bharatvarsha only. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. So we will end here. So thank you very much. We will see you again on Tuesday. Please remember our Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Prabha classes have moved to Tuesday evening, 9 p.m. So I will see you then and we'll continue our discussion of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's journey towards Jagannath Puri. Thank you very much. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada, jai Samadhi Gaura Jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna and thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Amir. Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Haribo. Ashwin, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Pujaji, Hare Krishna, Archana ji,
Thank you,
Leela
Prabhuji.
Mataji, Aditi. Sridhar ji, thank you. Suraj, nice to see you. Sapna ji, Anand Sundari Mataji, Charan Lakshmi Mataji, Srini ji.